Hi, and welcome to this pocket-sized look at this pocket-sized computer, this Psion Series 5 in its box, which I got a few weeks ago, and I think it's going to be a fun thing to take a look at, and it's got some potential to do some stuff that I'm kind of been meaning to do for a while, so I'm going to hook it up, if I can, to this Voodoo 2 equipped Pentium II machine, and see if it can even maybe do some gaming. I remember Psion because my mother had a Series 3 when I was a teenager, and she used to do all of the sort of household finances and stuff on it, so it's quite cool to get this, which is the sort of next jump up. That I don't think there was a Series 4, it just went from 3 to 5, and this one was launched in 1997, and I think there were a couple of upgraded versions. The Series 5 MX and a Series 5 MX Pro came out after it, but this was the first of the 5 series, and I think they even released a Series 7 a bit later on, which was like a much bigger thing, almost like a laptop sized thing, and I think they actually coined the term netbook to go with the Psion Series 7. The cool thing about this is, because I wouldn't probably be very interested in this as a standalone thing, is that it hooks up to PCs of the equivalent era. So that's why we've got the Pentium II out, because it can synchronize PC docking, offers compatible with Microsoft Lotus and Corel. And as well as that, it seems pretty well equipped with its own range of applications built right into the machine. We'll open up the box, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So the first thing out is PSI Win 2. So I guess that's Psion to Windows or Psion Windows 2. I don't know whether it was a PSI Win 1. So I've got all the registration stuff in here as well. There's even a little registration card with phone numbers to call and stuff like that should you have any problems. And there's a cool little catalogue. Always like catalogues because it gives you an idea of what to search for on eBay. And it looks like a quick start card. We won't be interested in that, we'll just be winging it. Then when we get to the hardware, looks like we've got the link cable that will allow us to communicate with the PC. A rather handsome leather wallet, I don't think it's real leather. Then we've got the software to link itself. I don't know how you pronounce that, Win 2 maybe? As in Psion, and then the machine itself, which looks to be in pretty good condition. Okay, we'll have a quick look at this catalogue to see what there was made for it back in the day. So we've got things like interpreters and presentation makers. So obviously there was a segment of this which was largely aimed at sort of business people. But it wasn't all just that. It looked like there's some pretty cool games on this. These are games released by Psion itself, I think. But yeah, these are like arcadey kind of games, and they look like a lot of fun, but I've seen no sign of those when I was looking for stuff on eBay. Then there's some general hints and tips on how to use stuff. And that hints and tips section kind of acts as a divider, because the first half of this pamphlet is to do with software that was released by Psion itself, and the second half seems to be third-party developers who created software for the Psion machines as well. So there's more business and navigation software and stuff like that, and also some other games made by other companies. And then there's quite a large section from a company called Purple Software, who seem to be quite big, a big third-party developer for the Psion, and we'll get back to them later because we've got some relevant things to go with what you see before you in this catalogue. And here we have the little stack of software that I did manage to get for this. So we've got the Street Planner, which was in that catalogue, and then we've got the Psion Series 5 manual. That should have been in the box. I did wonder where that was, but here it is. And then there's 3 things from Purple Software, the aforementioned Purple Software that we just looked at in the catalogue. So there's 3 sets of games, and 2 of them are still factory sealed in their cellophane. So I'm not going to touch those right now. One of them's open, so we'll have a look at that one and see if we can get some games installed on this thing. But before we get round to software, we'll have a quick tour around the machine. So we've got a big sticker on the front that says Epoch, which is the operating system. And Epoch was Psion's own operating system for these machines, but it was later sort of palmed off into a new company called Symbian, which some people may remember powered a lot of pre-smartphone mobile phones from the likes of Ericsson and Sony and Samsung, I think. So as mentioned before, we've got this rather nice wallet with some little pockets for various things, including the compact flash that this thing uses for storage. So there's space for 3 of those, which is handy. The machine itself is a super funky little thing. It uses a stylus to write on the touch screen, and it sits in this nice little sort of cubby hole at the back there. It's the only thing that's wrong with this is the spring clip that holds that in place is not quite right, and it keeps on popping out, so I might have to open it up and take a quick look at that at some point. On the back we've got a little trapdoor that takes the sync cable, so that's what we'll be using shortly. Next to that's the IR beam emitter thingamajig. And then we've got these funny little set of 3 buttons that are under a kind of cover on the front, and these are for voice notes, the voice note functionality of the machine, which I've no idea how that works, so I'll look into that at some point. And then at the back there's the battery compartment itself, which is super cool because it just takes 2 AA batteries, so there's no faffing about with recharging and stuff here, and you'll never have to worry about replacing an internal battery. Just at the side of the battery compartment we've got the speaker, and then to the side of that you've got your backup battery, which is a CR2032, and that's super easy to access and replace. Over on the other side there's some storage, so there's a slot for compact flash, which is cool. So I think this thing has 6 megabyte ROM that contains the operating system and gives you a bit of storage, but this gives you a lot of scope for, I think it takes up to 128 megs or something like that, so it gives you plenty to play with. These machines came in both 4 megabyte and 8 megabyte RAM versions, so this one's an 8 meg, which is cool, and the processor that runs it is an ARM 710, which is 18.5 megahertz more or less, I think. It's a very slick piece of design. The keyboard slides forward and the screen slides back. Then you've got a kind of set of preset touch points around the bezel of the LCD itself, which give you quick links to the various applications and some settings up the left hand side for copying and pasting and volume and stuff like that, or you can just navigate on the screen itself using the touch pen. So it's pretty cool. It's a very, very nifty bit of design. So it comes with a set of built-in apps, something to fulfill every one of your deepest needs in the world of your life administration. We've got a control panel, which, as you'd expect, has control panel-y type stuff. So you can set the contrast of the screen. It has a backlight, but it's either on or off, and it won't stay on very long because I guess it drains the battery, so it's kind of on for a minute or 2 and then it goes off by default and you've got to turn it back on, which is a bit of a pain. But the contrast, you can usually crank that up to make it pretty visible. And then you've got things like clock settings, audio feedback from key presses and all that kind of stuff. And then what you've got after that is essentially a kind of Microsoft Works type thing. So you've got Word. I'm surprised Microsoft didn't sue them. You've got Sheets. So word processor, spreadsheet, data for a database, agenda, calendar, and Sketch for drawing funky little pictures like this. Anyway, built-in apps are all well and good, but I want to load some games, so let's get out Psion II. Pop it in the CD drive and see if it gets something installed on the PC. Before I get around to installing, there's this rather cool kind of guide to the Series 5 on the CD, which is quite nice. You just play it through. It's a series of movies and it just takes you through all of the basics, how to use the built-in apps and just how to get up and running, basically. So onwards to install Psion. So there's some other stuff on here. If you browse the CD using that option, there's a whole bunch of kind of apps and programs. A lot of them are to do with specific things, like, for example, it supports ACT, which is a CRM program, which I think stands for Customer Relationship Management. So it's basically for managing your customers and integrating in your invoices and all that kind of business shite that we're not really interested in. So we'll just go ahead and we'll get the Psion installed and then see if we can link it up. Okay, so while that's installing, we can get the cable hooked up. So I guess this is just a serial cable that just has a specific fitting at the Psion end of it. So it's hooked up to the PC, hook it up to the Psion, and then there was another install. I wasn't sure what it was, but I ran it anyway. So this Symbian Epoch install, I'm not sure whether that's installing some link stuff back across onto the Psion, and then we should be ready to go and try and move some stuff around. Right, now to do some serious business on the machine. So the idea that I had for this, originally I was looking to do it on an old Amstrad machine, but I need to figure out a way of keeping track of all of my, my memory and my graphics cards, so I know what's what. And when I've got a machine that's sitting there, I know what's inside of it basically. So I want to kind of build up a spreadsheet or a database of something so I can keep track of all of my retro stuff. Now I was going to do it on this Amstrad, but I think it's going to be too much of a pain. As fun as it would be, there's just no easy way to transfer anything off that Amstrad. So getting stuff onto a PC to make a secure backup would have been a pain. But with this, it's going to be super easy. So I'm thinking now I'm going to use, initially I'll use a sheet, a spreadsheet, and just put in a bit of basic information about a couple of the machines. And then we'll see if we can sync that over and make a hard copy on the Pentium II that can be kept and printed off and so forth. So I ran off and made a few notes on the state of a few of the machines that are lying around before I stick them in a cupboard, and we've ended up with this sheet with sort of details about 5 or 6 machines, and then we can see if we can sync this across to the PC. So having typed the information in on the Psion and saved it, I just hit Psion backup on the Psion application, which generates a whole bunch of icons that you can see there on the desktop, and it started to back up. Once that was done, it tells you which folder it gets dumped into, and it was then a case of using one of the other apps, which is a convert file app. I actually thought it was going to be a bit more seamless than this, but it sends it over in the Psion format, and then you have to run this converter file, and then you choose which one of the supported formats you want. So on this particular machine, I've got Works 4, so I choose Works 4 spreadsheet format, and then save it to a position where I can get it and read it. So on the conversion app, I saved it out to the desktop as a file called machine specs, and now if I go into Works, I can browse to it and look at that. So yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite cool. So I can carry that Psion around with me into any room or any place and type stuff into it when I see stuff on the shelf, and then I just come back and feed it into here and update the spreadsheet, and I'll be able to just open it and read it and, copy it out onto a USB stick or something. Though having said that, you don't really need a USB stick because I can save it back onto the Psion, onto the compact flash card, and that's as good as having a backup anywhere else. Anyway, enough of that. Time to try and get some games on here, and these look like really exciting games to me. There's 5-pack, Home Run, Checkers, Yacht, is that Thioli, and Enigma. So let's get these loaded and see what they look like. So this is one of those purple software programs that we're looking at in the catalogue, and opening the box, we've got loads of registration cards, something called the Sigma Membership Program. That sounds classy. Don't know what it means. What do you get? Unlimited technical support, 10% discount, and a few other perks. All for the princely sum of £29.95 for your first year, and then £19.95 for every year thereafter. That sounds like quite a bargain, though I imagine those sums of money were considerably more valuable than they are today. And there's another catalogue which I guess outlines much the same stuff as the purple software section did in the other catalogue that we looked at. Yeah, look at that. I mean, there was no cellophane on this particular box, but these discs are still in their cellophane, so somebody opened this but didn't use it. And the other two are still factory sealed, so that's pretty cool. So we'll get them out. I guess that the way that you loaded your programs onto the Psion was always through a PC or a Mac, and then you downloaded it through the serial cable. I know there was a floppy disk add-on for the Psion, but I guess that you couldn't load software from it because they're Windows programs, and it was just for storage and things like that. So the disk went in, and browsing, there's like a setup program on the floppy for the first game. There's 1 game per floppy and 5 floppies. So this one's home run, and it should just be a case of hitting it and hitting OK, and then it should run the sync. But I kept on getting an error message. Now it does say that you can't have the Psion kind of auto sync that's part of PsyWin running at the same time as this, so I have disabled it, but it still seems to be hanging on to COM1. So it's when the setup program on the floppy disk runs, it thinks that COM1 is occupied by something else and cannot proceed. So I went round and round and round in circles with this and just couldn't seem to get round it. But then I wondered if I could just use the PsyWin program itself, because the PsyWin program does have its own install apps, external apps thing. So I gave that a go. And at first I thought I was having no luck with that either. And purely by accident, I ran it again and just looked down at the screen, and there was the icon for the game. So it had actually installed it, but it only installed it on the second go. So you have to run it through the Psion, the PsyWin installer first, and that installs it and fails, and then you run it again and it installs it and fails it again. But the second time it does actually install it. So there you go. So at this point, I remembered I hadn't actually put a flash drive in this, and I thought it's probably time to put a compact flash card in there. I think it's 128 meg one, and install all of these extra games onto there. And then it's just a case of running through the same procedure again. There's 2 installs for each, but eventually they all appeared in the library on the Psion. So all of these games go into the extras sort of folder, or the extras app, which I guess is kind of where your recreational things live, and a couple of extra things like the OPL, which I think stands for Open Programming Language, which I'll have a look at some point. So you could actually do some coding on this, and then it's got spelling and thesaurus and recorder and all that kind of extra comms type stuff. Well, it certainly seems there's no fragging to be done with this selection of games. They're all kind of cerebral, word and pattern, memory type games, and I probably have to read the instructions to figure out how to play them properly. I had to go at one of them and didn't really get very far. Enigma, which I think is just a guessing game, that I think the machine makes a pattern out of these 6 sort of predefined patterns on the left, and you have to guess where they are. And as you go along, it gives you clues and tells you which rows are right. So kind of Wordle with balls. So that kind of wraps up for the video, and this one was actually pleasantly surprising, because I thought, it's just a crappy little handheld, and I've got a few of these things and they never proved to be very useful, pocket PCs and stuff like that. But I like this. I like this one a lot, and I can see myself using this like a sort of enhancement to the hobby of retro collecting. I can see myself documenting stuff on this. I can see myself, maybe even using it to put my dentist's appointments and things in. I like it. I like it a lot. I love the keyboard. It's a shame it hasn't got a coloured screen, but maybe that's what gives it its kind of quirky character. But yeah, it was fun to use, and I think I'm really going to dig into this one a bit. Maybe have a look at a bit of coding, get into sort of some of the database stuff, and see if I can find any more games. But yeah, I really do like this machine, and I think I'm going to be using it a lot. I hope you liked it as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, it'd be great if you considered giving me a thumbs up, subscribing, leaving a comment below, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.